On this episode of Tell Us a Story.
Well, at Prism of Brilliance, we help individuals on their healing journey become aware of and release their limiting beliefs. So I'm not going to be asking you to run a marathon because I'm not running a marathon. So it's really helping that misconception of people thinking like this is like woo woo voodoo stuff. Was under the belief system for most of my life that like bad things were my fault and that I needed to be in this toxic positive place so that I didn't create more harm. While I'm playing instruments and using all of those healing modalities, we're moving up to the Akashic field, which is that record keeper of our souls. It's where all of our lifetimes and journeys have been. It's where our blueprint is. So Prism of Brilliance,
Fantastic.
TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, that's how you can find me.
Welcome to Tell Us a Story, the podcast by Belmont City Press, where entrepreneurs and sales professionals share their journeys, insights, and strategies for success. In each episode, our guests reveal how they've overcome challenges, established their brands, and leveraged their stories to promote their businesses so you can too. I'm Red Hilton, your host for this episode. Today I'm joined by Margie Breault, who's the owner of Prism of Brilliance. So, Margie, tell us a story.
Well, at Prism of Brilliance, we help individuals on their healing journey become aware of and release their limiting beliefs, heal from trauma, and achieve a lighter, freer, and more joy-filled life. Our specific purpose is to help relieve stress, ignite life force, and enable people to live more freely with the awareness of natural law and how that works in their life. Our ideal clients are those who are on a spiritual or healing journey seeking to transform the way they move through the world, overcome stress, anxiety, fear, and release limitations to ultimately achieve that freedom and live more authentically. And people can discover more about me at prismofbrilliance.biz and feel free to reach out to me anytime by email at prismofbrilliance@gmail.com.
Thank you for sharing that with us. Can you just, for our listeners, from your perspective, share what you mean when you say like a healing journey? Where do people generally start with you, and where can they hope to get to?
Yeah, so I have people who come to me on all walks of their healing journey. So I have people who have never tried any sort of healing modality, whether it be traditional therapy, medication, or any sort of spiritual, health, holistic well-being practices. And I have people who are, already working in the healing field, but still need that continued healing. So I have a range of people who come to see me. So it's really about meeting each individual person on the level that they're at. I am a foundational root teacher trained through oral transmission by Lisa Ashwari Murphy. And so with that, I have the ability to not just work with newcomers, but also work with people who are very adept in their own healing journey and even healers themselves.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Explain to me what a misconception is that you find yourself often educating people about so that they can understand what it is, what you do and how everybody theoretically can benefit from it.
A common misconception that I am always helping people work through, whether they're coming to a meditation or coming to a session with me or coming to a coaching call, is really helping people understand that I am not doing any sort of like voodoo magic on them. It's not some like out of realm, out of reach, unduplicatable experience that we're having together. The only difference is that I have more practice and more wisdom around it than they do. And then I'm really helping to shine that light on the practices that they can do in their life. And that everything that I do is based in science. Every
Mm-hmm.
single thing that I am asking people to do is something that I do myself. So I'm not going to be asking you to run a marathon because I'm not running a marathon. So I'm not going to say that's good for your wellness if I don't know if it's good for mine. If that's something you want to try, I totally encourage people to do things that are in their wheelhouse that they want to try. But I don't prescribe things to my clients or people who are working with me as something that I wouldn't do myself. And again, all of the things that I do are based in science. So natural law is based in science. Scalar energy is based in science. The science behind meditation is proven. The science behind how our words and our thoughts and our habits and our values and how we're working through the world and our thoughts really do communicate internally how our cells are working together, how our atoms are working together, like that biology of belief by Bruce Lipton, like on a microcellular level, we are communicating with ourselves all the time, and that is proven through science. So it's really helping that misconception of people thinking like this is like woo woo voodoo stuff, and really having them understand that like, well, that it's very magical, it is also very scientific.
Mm-hmm. Very scientifical.
Yeah, scientifical. I
Yeah.
like to say I'm merging the mystic and the scientist.
Nice. Talk to me, and this is, I think, something you and I both sort of have strong opinions on, but toxic positivity.
Ooh, toxic positivity used to be the air I lived and breathed, to be quite honest. I was very entrenched into that world, and that's actually like where I found myself on the beginning of this journey.
Mm,
And toxic positivity is truly when we're in this unobtainable place of trying to pretend that everything's okay all the time. We have no heavy, intense emotions. We're never sad. We're always happy. You know, we're always in places of joy, rainbows and butterflies and unicorns and all of that. We want to ascend. We want to go higher. We don't really want to connect in with the root and really get to the root of the issue, which is really like leaving our bodies behind. It's doing our body the disservice. It's also really unsustainable. So, in that place of toxic positivity, you're negating the quote unquote negative things in life or the heavy and dense things in life. And so, emotions are just energy, and eventually they demand to be felt because what we resist will persist,
mm-hmm,
and we have to see it to free it. So if we're not allowing ourselves to feel emotions or looking at where they came from or identifying what the triggers are and why those stories come up when we have those triggers or have those emotions, or why we're even trying to disassociate from them, then we get in this toxic pattern of holding, disassociating, pretending they don't exist. And when you're in that place of toxic positivity, it's like way, way, way up here, which is very, very unsustainable. And eventually you're going to crash, and
mm,
it's like the whole world crumbles. You break your leg, you stumble and fall all the way into the deep, dark cave, and you stay there for a while until you eventually make your way out and you go back to the toxic positivity realm. That's like that really big switch when people are in that toxic positivity place, and they also don't realize that their body is in full decay, because when you're there and you're not actually experiencing heavy intense emotions, you're not processing them, they're all holding physically in your body.
mm-hmm,
So again, back to like my origin story, like toxic positivity is where I was under the belief system for most of my life that like bad things were my fault, and that I needed to be in this toxic positive place so that I didn't create more harm. Like I needed to pretend everything was good all the time so that
mm,
I didn't cause people to be in more suffering, which I thought was my fault all the time anyway, because I was told that and then I believed that and then I operated in that pattern. So really early in my early 20s, I felt very disconnected from self. I had been going in and out of therapy, but I learned how to lie to my therapist, and I was in toxic positivity with my therapist. And so everything was always like really good. I was never really telling her or him, because I bounced around from therapist to therapist. Like nothing was ever, not okay. I was okay. I was handling, I was doing this, I was doing this. And therapy gave me a really good avenue to be able to analyze maybe
mm,
some of those things and talk really well, and act like, oh, I'm going to therapy, so must have it all together, right? But truly, I was lying to my therapist. I was still in that toxic positive place. I was still very disconnected from my own truth because I had no idea who I was. I had no idea how do I even identify my emotions. And I was always taught that my emotions were wrong. Like really early on, when I was 4 years old, my mom used to have me look in the mirror and tell myself that I was a liar. And so that would always be when it challenged what she needed to believe to keep herself safe from her own survival skills and her own
mm-hmm,
survival instincts and the things that she needs to heal from and on her journey, which had nothing to do with me, but I was a kid, so I didn't know that. So in my
exactly.
early 20s, yeah. So in my early 20s, a friend introduced me to Reiki. And
Mm,
so that's when I was introduced to energy medicine. And because of that disassociation and separation from self, another friend was like, hey, I think it'd actually be really good for you to learn the theories behind these practices and behind this medicine, because I think that's really where you're going to connect to yourself.
Mm,
that's where you're really going to go deeper because of all of the limiting beliefs that you have been working inside of your whole life. And at that point, I was like, sure, I don't know what you're talking about, but let's do it. And she introduced me to a natural law class. And so that's when I started learning about the law of polarity, when we're talking about like life isn't just positive or negative, light or dark, up or down, um, cold or warm. Everything has a built-in duality. And the true power is coming into the awareness of both without labeling things in these boxes and saying, well, it's positive or negative, or it's good or
hmm.
bad, because one, emotions aren't good or bad. People aren't just all good or all bad. Things aren't just up or down. What goes up must come down. What goes left is eventually going to go right. And so understanding that on a, the basis of an atom has a nucleus in the middle, in the eye of the storm, and then it has positive and negative ions swirling all around it that generates the energy for it. And the nucleus needs to have both to stay balanced. And so since everything in nature consists of atoms, including human beings, we also need to work in that same vein. So when I learned that, it literally blew my mind. I felt like I could create a whole new way for me to move through the world because in that moment, I realized there's a choice here. I can either learn more and not have to operate in this place that's unsustainable and not even reality, or I can learn more and shift the way that I'm moving through the world.
Would you say that
And
was your, true light bulb moment?
it was truly the like if ever there was a light bulb moment in my life, that is the one. That is the one that was like, hook, line, and sinker, reel it on in. This is what you're going to do for your life. And I didn't know at that time that I was going to work in the field. I just knew that I wanted to learn more.
Mm,
And the more I continue to learn, the more I realize that I am a way shower, I am a teacher, and I am a healer, and I am not only doing those things in the world now, but it's truly something that I interweave into every facet of anything that I do, not just when someone's coming to a session or coming to a workshop or, calling me for advice. No matter where I am, whether I'm working in my business, whether I'm doing leadership consulting, whether I'm working in the city that I work in, whether I'm doing volunteering, whether I'm home with my family, whether I'm working with a client,
mm.
it's interwoven everywhere. So I'm really not just being a way shower through showing my clients, but I show everybody who comes into contact with me a different way to operate.
I always associate, just getting back to toxic positivity, with basically setting you up for failure, because I believe it's a lack of accountability. You can't be at that level, of talk, constantly finding the positive and the good and everything else, because you're going to end up dismissing other people's feelings because you don't want to process through anything that isn't positive. And in life, we have to process through, the negative emotions just as much as the positive. So I feel like you're setting yourself up for failure. And so the toxic positivity to me is just setting you up for failure. It is something where, you're not going to deal with other people's emotions and the result and consequences of your actions because they're not in line with the positive spin that you want to put on everything.
You're also not holding space for people to process the way that they're going to be processing. So,
Mm-hmm.
and that way you invalidate the way that they're feeling. And that doesn't feel good for anybody. And not that anyone's intending to do that, because they're all just working on survival mode. They're all working in roles that have been created for them and belief systems that they have worked in for so long that they don't even realize how limiting that is and
Mm-hmm.
how stressful that is, because it's stressful to try to maintain that facade of everything's happy and rainbows and sunshines and butterflies all the time. And also the flip side, if you're in that heavy and dense place all the time, you're also in a place where you're not taking accountability for anything. You're always pointing the finger everywhere else. And
Mm-hmm.
so neither of those are true. Like, the perpetrator, the savior, the victim, those are roles that are constructed. And really, if you're operating within those roles and those systems, more often than one, not, you're operating in more than one of them. So if you're operating in the victim role, you are perpetrating against yourself.
Mm-hmm.
If you're operating in the perpetrator role, you are making someone else a victim. And you also are victimizing yourself by the heavy and dense things that you're doing through that lack of accountability, through the whatever karma you're creating for yourself. So it's also keeping in mind all of those universal laws that I work in through and really helping people understand where they work in their life and being aware of how they're working inside of them and where they can use that to their benefit.
Talk about the book that you're making a contribution to that's coming out later this year. What is the contribution and what are sort of who are you speaking to in your writing?
Yeah, so I wrote a chapter for an anthology series called Ignite Humanity. My chapter will be in the Raising the Global Consciousness section of that book. It is all talking about my healing journey and how that healing journey catapulted me to be where I am now. And it's really speaking to anyone who has ever been in toxic positivity, anyone who's ever been bullied, because that was an energy that was very, 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 very much something that I called in as my counterpart. I constantly was bumping into bully energy, and making friends with the bully so I could keep myself safe from harm because I was bullied a lot as a kid. And so then I would then start to be friends with the bully. I would make the bully a sandwich and say, let's
Mm.
be friends now so that I can keep myself safe from you so that you don't harm me. And, anyone who understands that flight, flight, freeze, fawn, and where you are inside of that, like where are your triggers and instincts in that survival mode? Like people who are on survival mode and who are looking for, is there a way out? That is who my story is for.
When you talk about making, the bully the sandwich, there's always that fine line, the nuances sort of you're talking about earlier with, relationships and yourself and other people and everything else. It's like, we're sort of taught that, okay, the bully is, sort of manifesting some pain and however it is that they're doing and whatever it is they've learned. And, we should sort of meet them where they are. But then where's that line between, reaching out to someone else and protecting yourself?
Yeah. So that's where boundaries and healthy boundaries come into play. And so it's important to offer compassion to anyone who's suffering because anyone who is causing pain to others intentionally or unintentionally, anyone who is putting that out into the world, anyone who's in shame and blame and fear, they are suffering.
Mm.
Any of those bullies that might still be bullies now because they were taught that and they believe that's who they are in a state of suffering. We want to offer that compassion. But in our freely giving of that compassion, we do have to consider ourselves first.
Hmm.
So that's where a healthy boundary comes into play. Boundaries are where I can still love you, but I'm loving me first.
Hmm.
Boundaries are like where I can offer you that compassion, but here's my boundary to that compassion, right? So it's not necessarily like you have to reach out and do anything for those people. It's just not being angry at them and throwing anger at them. It's seeing them be their healthiest and healed self. It's seeing them in their highest light. It's not offering them hate. It's not offering them judgment. It's not holding any of that. It's seeing, I hope they heal from that.
Hmm.
It's saying that and seeing it. It's seeing that timeline beyond where they are right now and seeing them beyond that with your optimal imagination. And then it's not so much about saying you have to like invite them to your table. You don't have to invite the bullies to your table, right? But you just
Hmm.
like don't wish them ill will. You
Hmm.
don't throw hate or judgment towards them.
Hmm. You want to make sure they have what they need in their life in order for them to be successful. You don't want to see them.
Right, but you also don't need to be the one to provide what they need.
Correct. Correct.
And something that I that I struggled with early on in my journey was that I am a teacher and I like to teach. And my one of my mentors, Lisa, said to me, you're a great teacher and you do really well in that arena, right? Like
Mhm.
you are great at that, but not everyone signed up to be a student.
Yeah. Not
And I
everyone
was
wants
like,
to learn. Yeah.
right. So she was like, you have to hold the space for the people who don't want to learn, right? Don't offer advice or tools or practices or your knowledge and wisdom to people who didn't ask.
Mm, I can see that. So, with regards to your teachings and what it is that people learn from you, walk me through. Do you have, courses that you offer? Is it one-on-one, sort of coaching that you do at Prism of Brilliance? Talk to me about if someone wanted to reach out to you, what is the process for finding you and what could they expect?
Yeah, absolutely. So they can go to www.prismbrilliance.biz. From there, there is a scheduler. You can schedule an appointment with me, whether it's a 15-minute free consultation call that I offer to anyone who is wants to learn more. They can book that. They can book energy for life coaching, transformate flow and transformational manifestation coaching call. They can schedule a transformational energy healing session. They can also schedule a past life recognition session because I do past life regressions as well. Um, with that, all of those different the sessions look a little different. So, an energy for life coaching session, we're focusing on more one-on-one based. We're doing a lot of talking while I'm playing instruments and using all of those healing modalities, but
Hmm.
it's more structured than, say, a transformational energy session where someone's laying on my table and they're getting a little more transformational body work on top of hands-on, on top of talking, on top of sound, on top of Reiki, on top of all the healing modalities that I have under my in my tool belt. Um, and then I also do those past life regressions, which are longer of sessions. They're usually 2 hours. And we're looking to release a limitation that maybe you have held in a past lifetime, or we're looking for a gift that you want to ignite in this current lifetime that maybe you held in a last lifetime.
Those seem fascinating to me, and I have like zero knowledge. Like it's like talk me through, like give me more of that because I want to understand a little bit more about what would someone like when you're walking somebody through, or what does that mean, or what could someone expect? Because those
Yeah, so
seem fascinating.
yeah, so it's not every one session is the same. They all look different. And
Hmm.
sometimes, someone books a transformational energy session and it turns into a past life regression, or
Hmm.
someone books a past life regression and we're actually doing a combination of energy for life coaching and past life regression. And usually they're all working together. It's just like, what is that person looking for in the moment?
Hmm.
And a past life regression, we're doing a journey typically through the drum. First, we're getting people centered. We're doing what's the intention? What are we looking for? Whether we're looking to release something or find something. We're doing a bioscalar activation so that we're connected and protected by the highest light. We're letting all of those laws ignite in our field so that we're really governed by those laws of the universe. And so that nothing heavy or dense can actually change the course of our journey. We're unifying all things to the light, and I'm calling in guides and I'm calling in sources of information. I'm connecting in with the stream of consciousness. I'm connecting in with the toroidal field of the earth, which is her heartbeat. I'm connecting in with the toroidal field of the person that I'm working with, but not just their heartbeat in their physical form, their soul's heartbeat, so that we can move through all of those directions. We're moving up to the Akashic field, which is that record keeper of our souls. It's where all of our lifetimes and journeys have been. It's where our blueprint is.
Hmm.
And then we're doing a drum journey through the timeline. We're releasing any obstacles that might be in the way. And then we're arriving at the destination to release or find whatever it is that we're trying to find. And that intention is set either before the session or during the beginning of the session when we're doing that bioscalar activation that comes forward. And so that that is typical, whether we're like even if we're not doing a past life regression, like there's typically a journey involved. There's drums, there's crystal bowls, there's didgeridoos, there's conch shell blowing, there's all of those things. There's tuning forks, there's hands-on Reiki, there's indigenous practices, there's ancient practices. It's all rooted in ancient wisdom and natural law and working in that scientific place. And I do that in groups as well. So I don't just do that one on one. I do that in group settings. And then I also teach some workshops as well.
And are your workshops online or mostly in person?
Right now, my workshops are in person.
Okay. All right. Um, Talk to me more about natural law. What is it that someone should know about that? What's important?
Yeah. So natural law is Bon Po, pre-religion, the way that ancient and indigenous peoples worked in unison with the planet and the stars and the sky and everything, because we are everything and everything is us, and as above, so below. And it's still how nature, separated from human beings, still operates. So it's still how the birds operate, still how the trees operate, how the deer, the whales, the dolphins, the bumblebees, the butterflies, they're all still lurking in natural law because they haven't separated themselves from it. Human beings have, because we've left our true guiding system. So when we are created in the womb, our first thing that's created is our heart, and we're connecting in with the heartbeat of the mother, and then the brain.
Mm.
And in our world now, we've given our brain the job of being in charge. And it really, the brain needs a job, and we've given it the job to be in charge, but really it needs the job of listening to our heart. So we're
Mm.
separated from actually listening to that guiding system, which is that choroidal field. So our choroidal field comes from our heartbeat, comes from our heart. So it's an electromagnetic wave that's like a donut that gets created from our heartbeat. And that's the earth has its own choroidal field, has its own electromagnetic frequency that's in like a donut around the earth.
I'm just
And
hearing
so
donuts right now. You know what I mean? Donuts.
I
Like
hear
you
you,
had me at
donuts.
donuts, honestly.
But it looks like a donut is really what it
Hmm.
looks like. And when we left that place of operating there, we disconnected from the heartbeat of the earth. So we disconnected from working in the natural way.
Mm.
So, and truly, again, it's pre-religion, separated from when people try to move into that place of the love of power versus the power of love. So bringing us back into natural law allows us to see how we're all interconnected, see how it's all interwoven, and see how much power we truly hold, because we've been working in a place of fear and operating as if those fear and worries are true. And that's the brain, right?
Mm.
That's separation. But when we move out of that separation into our heart, we can move in a different way. So it's a different operating system.
Mm. Fascinating. Fascinating. So let me ask you this. What is your Monty? So Monty is our mascot at Belmont City Press. It's our little owl. And I always like to ask people, what are some words of wisdom that you can leave our listeners with today? Something, like the phrase or a mantra or some sort of guide that you have for yourself that, maybe reminds you of a lesson learned or something that's inspirational.
I'll give you my favorite one. So, something that I tell any single person that works with me,
Mm-hmm.
and I say it frequently, whether I'm guiding a meditation, I'm doing a workshop, or you're working one on one with me, is start to identify the belief systems that limit you and break agreement. Because the way that I operate in the world is that a belief system that limits me is not the truth. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
constantly looking at my beliefs and saying, is that limiting? Does that allow me to move beyond? Am I saying I can't? Am I saying it's impossible? Am I saying I should not? I could not? Is the belief system limiting? And if it is, start to break agreement one at a time, because if you try to do it with every belief system you hold all at once, it's going to be really hard and you're going to stop. But when you start to identify that a belief system you're holding, a way you're operating in the world is limited through a belief that you can't, you shouldn't, you're not the person, start to break agreement with those beliefs.
Do you think that's good advice in any relationship, whether they're limiting or not, or, with people as well, as break agreement if it's not serving you?
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that, well, and just like that, you were saying that, it's challenging, do a little bit at a time, that sort of thing. I think that's the challenge that people face. I think that they're trying to do everything instead of something, that 10% better is 10% better. And sometimes we don't recognize that, the small steps will add up.
Well, people don't understand that it's a practice and a
Mm.
discipline, and practice doesn't mean we're going to be perfect, because perfect isn't real. Perfect is unobtainable. Perfect is already in judgment. Perfect is already in separation, right? We want progress. So I want to do just a little bit better than I did yesterday. I want to learn just a little bit more than I learned yesterday. I'm
Hmm.
not competing with any single person. I am allowing myself to grow and knowing that that growth is never one, linear, and two, done.
Mm.
So if I know that I can continuously expand and grow, I can continue to have more knowledge, I can continue to go deeper. If I can continue to do that on this journey in this physical form, in this timeline, right now, right in the here and the now, then and then I don't have to be perfect on top of it, that it's a practice that I have to become disciplined in. Well, you can't come disciplined in it unless you start doing it.
Hmm.
Then I'm not going to try to do it all at once, because Rome wasn't built in a day. And so neither am I.
Hmm. Hmm. Are you ready for our rapid fire?
I'm ready.
All right, let's get to know the Margie behind the Margie. And I'm going to give you a few things that, you can make your choice on, and I'll attempt to not pass judgment is basically what it comes down to. Ready?
Okay.
All right. Hot chocolate or coffee?
Hot chocolate.
Okay, we can be friends. Let's see. Hats or scarves? Mm,
Scarves.
okay, all right, okay. I love a hat, but I hate the post hat hair. You know what I'm saying? Like you commit to it. If you go hat, you're going hat for the
You
day.
have to go hat for the
You have to go
whole
hat.
day.
Yeah, absolutely. I get that. Vintage or new?
Vintage.
Of course I knew that. Spontaneous or planned?
Ooh. I
Planned
like to
spontaneity.
uh honestly, yeah, I'm a little bit of that.
I hear you.
Actually, a lot
Yeah,
of bit of that.
yeah, 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 yeah. Breakfast or dinner?
Hmm. Hmm. Breakfast.
I like eating breakfast for dinner, I think is like the ideal life. You know what
It
I'm
is.
saying?
I really just want to have pancakes or waffles or omelets for dinner as much as possible.
Yeah, pancakes are everything, aren't they?
Yeah, they
Yeah.
are.
Cooking or baking?
Whew. Cooking.
Okay, because like that's on the cooktop. Like baking means you need to open the oven and take all the stuff out and then like put it in there. And that is just not in my wheelhouse. That is
Yeah,
just,
I'm gonna be honest. I really don't cook often because my husband's such a great cook, so I don't
well,
have to. Um, and neither of us really enjoy baking, but we will because our kids like to bake.
yeah, no. That is that, like there's very few people after the age of like 9 that enjoy baking, I swear. And
And
they're
but
all
you know what?
grandmothers.
And they're probably really good at it. They have the
Right.
best recipes.
Right, right. No, that that's their lives, place in life, and that's fine. Scary movie or comedy?
Comedy,
Poetry or prose?
poetry.
I think I'd want to answer that, but I would probably say prose. Just because I think that it's just a different mind for poetry. Either writing or reading it or anything else. It's just such a different mindset. You know what I'm saying? But I'd
It
probably
is.
say prose. Yeah, absolutely. All right. So our guest to guest question. Every guest, leaves a question for the next guest. And today I honestly feel as though this was perhaps written for you. And the guest that left this had no idea where it was going to. Are you ready?
I'm ready and
All
I'm
right.
excited.
What is the tune or the music or the song that is still inside you that you have not expressed or shared with the world yet?
What is the tune?
Or the music or the song? Like, what is a piece of you that you have not shared with the world yet?
Ooh,
I know, right?
I have to dig deep for that one because I share a lot of myself with the world.
Mm-hmm.
Um, is it in the form of a song? Is this
It
question in
could
the
be
form of a
anything. I mean,
song?
it could be metaphorical as well. Like, what is something that you haven't shared that is something that's inside of you that you just haven't expressed yet?
This is a great one.
We stumped Margie.
You did stump me. I feel like this is a beautiful question.
I think it's magnificent, and it sort of requires a tremendous amount of self-reflection.
Yeah. It's not so often that I have a question I feel like I need to take a second to answer it. Um, something that I don't frequently talk about or really, really don't talk about at all outside of a healing session is I had a lot of deep-seated rage um, when I first came into the healing place.
Hmm.
And I think that toxic positivity kept me so separate from the rage. And it's something that I so often have even still, as far as I am, looking at myself causing harm.
Hmm.
Um, I can take accountability as soon as I recognize it, but looking at it, even in a past perspective, um, I have a really hard time saying if I did it on purpose.
Hmm.
Um, if I not that I meant to cause harm, but like I did or said or whatever I did, um, I was uprooted, right? Like I got angry and I told someone that they were being really annoying, right? And like I was uprooted and I had a hard time saying like, yes, I was uprooted and I was mad,
Mm.
right? Like I could take accountability that I said something that wasn't kind and that I shouldn't have said it, but didn't take accountability for the why,
For
like
where it came
why
from.
from where it came from. And so that is something that I think will, could be continue something I work on because it's a blind spot for me. So something that I always want to look at because that toxic positivity was something that was ingrained, and that not wanting to look at that harm not only came from the perspective of like I thought that I caused all the harm in the world.
Mm.
And so now looking at it is something that like, ooh, I don't want to, it's hard. It's hard. I don't want to look at harm
Right.
caused. And so that's something that I don't talk about a lot. It's actually a question I never get asked.
Mm. Well, now you have.
Now I have.
So one more time, sort of tell us where we can find you, what we can expect, who is it that you're sort of, speaking to in the moment right now that you feel you can be that bridge from conception to execution and getting them to a better place in their life.
Yeah. So if you want to reach out to me, you can go to my website again, www.prismofbrilliance.biz. I know the BIZ is not typical. People have like the .com or the .org, and I have the .biz. So it's easier to remember my website.
We're going to put the link in the show notes so someone can click and get to you, but it is good to be clear. Mm-hmm.
Perfect. And anyone who's listening to this conversation, they're like, wow, I want to learn about natural law. I want to have that power. I want to understand how I'm working inside of those, and more than just like the law of attraction and manifestation. What do all those mean? What is she talking about? Please feel free to reach out to me. I'd love to have a session. I'd love to have a conversation. I'd love to invite you to my natural law workshop that I hold at the last Friday of every month in person at Truth Organic in Grafton. That information is also available on my website. So you don't need to remember it from this podcast, but if you go to my website, you can find it. So I feel
And
like
that's in
that
Grafton, Massachusetts, for anybody who is
yes, Grafton, Massachusetts. It is in person. And then anyone who, maybe isn't in person, I do virtual sessions as well. So even if you're not in New England, I can't travel to you, or you travel to me, or whatever we find works comfortable for us. I do virtual sessions as well. All of my sessions are available virtually. And I also have some resources available on Amazon for people who are looking to expand their knowledge around natural law and some of the practices that I help people start to do in their own lives. I have a natural law workbook and a flow coaching coming into rhythmic reality workbook available on Amazon.
Okay. And we will put the links to those in the show notes as well. What about social media? Are you on social media and active?
Yep, I'm on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. I intermittently post on TikTok. I try to be a little more active on there because it's where all the young people are.
Kids these days. What are your handles? What are your handles and how can I find them? And we can put those links as well, but it's for those listening.
Yeah, I'm Prism of Brilliance on all three. So Prism of Brilliance, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, that's how you can find me. My link tree is on all of those as well. So you can find every link that you could possibly want to. Any podcasts that I'm on, any publications that get released, any newsletter signups, anything that you could possibly want or ask of me is available on that link tree as well.
Fabulous. What are your parting words for our listeners?
My parting words for your listeners are thank you for holding the space for this whole conversation. And if you were open and you learned something, thank you for opening the space for yourself as well.
That's fabulous. Well, I just want to thank you, Margie, for, sharing your stories, your insights, and you with us today. I appreciate your time. It's extremely valuable, and I hope I honored that here today.
You did. Thank you so much, Red. And thank you so much for honoring the conversation and allowing me to be here for your audience and for you.
Thanks. To our listeners, if you have a story to share, visit tellasastorypodcast.com. If you're an aspiring author, a seasoned business owner, or looking to elevate your personal brand, visit belmontcitypress.com for expert advice on writing your own success story. Trust the next chapter because you are the author. Now, tell us a story.